to Anthony. He'll do an intro for him, and then you guys can do an intro for yourselves. Just to start off, I'm Nesa. I am a CS student at the University of Waterloo. I am currently the co-president of the Data Science Club. I've been involved with them since I think first year, so yeah, super passionate about what we do. And yeah, I'm just here to talk to you guys, learn more about your guys' experience, and yeah, super excited to be here today.
Thank you, Nesa. So I'm a fifth-year student in econ at Waterloo, and upon graduation, I'll be headed to a bank as a data scientist. So that's I guess, an explanation of why I'm interested in data science is because it's about to be my career. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you guys today. So I'll pass it off to Mikel first to introduce himself.
So, hi, everyone. I'm Mikel. I'm also a computer science student at the University of Cambridge here in the UK, which is why you can see it's basically midnight here. But yeah, I've been doing machine learning quite a lot from Kaggle and going on to do other things for several years now. And I became, I think, still the youngest ever competitions grandmaster. And so that experience has basically propelled me through all sorts of other research and other machine learning things I've done. So yeah, we're happy to talk about that. Very excited.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ruchi. I'm a graduate student here at Carnegie Mellon University. And before I started my program, I was leading the data science initiatives for Open Mind, which is a nonprofit focused on privacy-preserving technologies in the world of AI. So I'm super interested in the world of data ethics in general. And a little about my Kaggle experience. I didn't start too long ago, and I became a triple grandmaster last year. And one of my friends told me that I happened to be the youngest, so it was a cool thing for me. And I'm really happy to be here today and meet all of you. It's amazing.
It sounds really cool, like both of your backgrounds and experiences, like being like the youngest Kaggle Grandmaster and Triple Grandmaster. That is so cool. And you guys are like super young, like you're both in school right now. So that's really inspiring, I think, to other students as well who are, I know a lot of people are kind of intimidated to get started with Kaggle just because it just sounds very intimidating. Like I know that was the case with me, but it's so inspiring to see that students are also able to like make it big on Kaggle. So I think that's, yeah, super inspiring.
I think another thing that I want to highlight is I think Kaggle is really hard for a lot of students to hop into because a lot of the challenges nowadays are not like simple tabular data sets. My understanding is that in the past, before I ever joined Kaggle, apparently, it was mostly tabular data sets, and that was like the most common one. But that's not really the case anymore. And even for myself, there's a lot of challenges that I'd like to undertake, but it takes a lot of time to get familiar with the data even. So yeah, we're really excited to have you guys because from your guys' experience, you guys have both dealt with a lot of non-tabular data sets and done a lot of work in those areas. So I guess the first question this is for both of you. How has being a Kaggle Grandmaster impacted your guys' career? So I guess I'll pass that to Mikel first, and then we'll hear from Ruchi.
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's really changed a lot of things. I mean, obviously, there's the impact that all the experience I've had, and sort of being forced into real world experience, sort of gives you quite a different perspective from research because. In research, it's quite easy to spend a year going on, looking into something that works quite nicely on paper, but it's only, when you've got 3 months to solve a specific problem and you're not allowed to change the parameters of the problem or anything like that, that really the sort of best tricks come to light. And so that experience and being able to do rapid prototyping and so on is quite helpful. My favorite thing has been being able to team up on Kaggle competitions, and that's how I've learned quite a lot over the years. Basically, asking other people who are doing, on the top of the leaderboard, hey, do you want to team up? And then you share ideas and you learn really, really quickly that way. And basically, that's allowed me to make connections and to find various opportunities that I'll talk about later. But yeah, I probably wouldn't be an overstatement to say that it's changed my life in the sense that so many things over the past few years have come from pretty much directly from Kaggle, whether that's from the connections or experience or stuff I can put on my CV, that sort of thing. So that's really been quite a nice few years.
So in my case, I started off with courses on Coursera, and then I wanted to be exposed to real world challenges, and that's when I came across Kaggle, and I saw all these competitions which were previously intimidating to me. So I started off with other data sets and notebooks and discussions, and in the process of making notebooks and creating data sets and talking to people on the discussion forums, I think I learned a lot, and that's when I sort of went into competition. So that was how my trajectory was on Kaggle. And the way it has been beneficial for me is the fact that I had a lot of diversified experience and an online portfolio that recruiters could look at. So it really amplifies someone's presence when they're active in a community of data science researchers and people who are just extremely excited about data science in general.
No, definitely. That is, yeah, super fascinating. Like really cool. Yeah, it's really nice to see that like something you're really passionate about, like Kaggle, is actually like, also really helpful in real life as well, like for like other things, like other than just like a competition, right? So it's really nice to see that like it's very like applicable, I guess, versatile in a way. So that's yeah, like really fascinating. Another question that I was wondering about is what are some aspects of your job that you've learned through real world experiences rather than through Kaggle? Like it's kind of like I guess on the flip side of the previous question, but yeah, it's something that I was wondering. I'll pass it off to Ruchi first and then Mikel after.
So for me, I used to learn about how we need to incorporate diversity in a particular training set or when we're working with competitions and things like that. So that's not something that we can find when we're reading books, and it's just like a real life problem, right? So that's something I learned when I was in taking part in competitions, and also engineering the entire workflow right from the beginning to the end. That's something that we learn through only with when we're working with something with a problem that's very hands-on. So that's something that I could really apply to my work on outside of Kaggle and outside of my university.
I think Ruchi made a really good point that I actually hadn't thought of, which is about the data preparation side. On Kaggle, you're given the data set, but the data preparation side is a whole can of worms, and basically you have to make sure that when you're doing things in the real world, that your training data and your test data is going to reflect what happens when you actually deploy your system, and that's often where loads of those systems fail. And I've seen this from the side of even organizing on Kaggle. You may have heard that lots of competitions have these data leaks where when you throw 2,000 people at a problem, someone will find a way to solve it incorrectly. And this has happened. I've come up with this in the past where there was one competition where I think it was Google. They created this challenge to classify toxic comments. And I saw that Google Cloud had a model for classifying toxic comments. So I was very, very curious to see how well this model did. So I ran through it, I submitted it, and I shot straight to the top of the leaderboard. And I was like, oops. And they had to generate an entirely new data set for the competition because of that. But I think also having been on the side of helping organize competitions, that there's so much work has to go into preparing that data. And then probably the other thing is just software engineering. When you're doing something on Kaggle, it's all about fast prototyping and just getting something to work, because you don't have to think about, oh, how maintainable will this be in a year, or stuff like that, writing documentation or anything like that. That all goes out the window.
thank you, Mikel, for the awesome anecdotes. That's really interesting. My next question is, what are some aspects of your job that you've learned through real world experiences rather than through Kaggle? So any data science or machine learning knowledge that you've gained through your job rather than Kaggle, something that Kaggle didn't prepare you for, maybe. And I'd like to hear from Mikel first, if you don't mind.
So I think Nisa is smiling because she just asked this question. but yeah, we sort of went off on a tangent. But yeah, it's basically what I said about software engineering and so on.
Right. I'm sorry, I misread it. I meant what I meant to ask was, how do you balance school and Kaggle and still find time for all of these responsibilities? And same question still to you, Mikel.
Yeah. It's not very easy. I mean, so most of the Kaggling I actually did in high school. And since going to Cambridge, it's sort of gone down because there's so much to do. And like I've generally found, I don't know how applicable this is at other places, but for me personally, I found that if I sign up to things, if I agree to do things, I'll find time to do it. And otherwise, for example, if I say no, I don't have time, I'm just gonna, I need to spend time on my work, I'm gonna spend all my time doing the schoolwork. And if I decide, okay, I'm gonna agree to do this as well, then the schoolwork will get done somehow. It always does. And so, for example, like right now, I'm actually in the middle of a hackathon myself at Cambridge. We're doing a little game jam. So you just it's a case of just not being being willing to just try stuff and try to find a balance. But it is hectic for sure.
I'd agree with that. Like, it's extremely hectic to manage everything and make sure you have time for each of the things that you've planned out. But in my case, I at least try to set out some time during the week, especially towards the weekend, where I'm like, okay, I need to dedicate this amount of time to learning something new or like doing something for the community. So that's usually the weekends for me where I go crazy on Kaggle nowadays. But during the pandemic, I think I used to be active like every day, which is something I miss right now. But yeah.
Definitely, yeah. No, it's really cool to see how, like what Mikhail said, like schoolwork is always gonna get done, but like it's nice that you guys are like dedicating like specific time to Kaggle because like I feel like that always happens to me when I make goals for myself. Like I definitely want to work on a project this term, but it just ends up getting pushed to the back burner. I'll just keep telling myself that I'll do it next week, but next week never comes. So it's nice to see that, yeah, you guys are like dedicated to the Kaggle grind, and yeah, make like actually like working on it. Like kind of going back to something that Ruchi said earlier about how she's interested in like the ethical side of like machine learning and data science. I wanted to know what your thoughts are on how ChatGPT is impacting society. I know it's kind of a hot topic right now, so yeah, I'll ask Ruchi first and then Mikel after.
I think it's a very wide debate where people are saying it's a positive impact for the society, and some are arguing for the negative effects of it. I would say that it's extremely beneficial, and no, it's not going to take our jobs. It's only going to make sure that we are extremely productive. Because it's like having a constant assistant by our side to enhance our productivity. So I'm really happy that it's going to be integrated into different applications in the near future, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I've sort of been a bit blindsided by it, to be honest, because I feel like I looked away for like, I basically blinked and a ChatGPT appeared, because obviously I was trying GPT-3 and everything else and so on, and it all seemed like slow incremental progress. But I guess the latest stuff that sort of Google, so OpenAI and the other cohort have been doing recently has worked very well. I think it's not going to take over all our jobs yet. I think we may have some bumpy stuff I saw someone talking about basically email like spam is going to get a lot more annoying because it's all going to seem like real emails. And one thing I was taken aback by was sort of in the Microsoft keynote that they had recently. They showed off this like, it's basically rebranded ChatGPT integration, or so I'm told. But as the use case they show is like, oh, it will compose your email for you. You say like in a few words what you want, and it will write this long email asking for it. But then the person on the other end is subjected to reading this long text when they could have just been sent this. I would much rather be sent a 5-word prompt with no hello or anything like that than a wall of text. So I'm hopeful that I don't have to start reading many more walls of text in my future. But we'll have to see how that turns out.
They say sometimes inventions create new inventions like on top of them, and I think maybe the next invention will be a ChatGPT email detector to detect if you've been sent a wall of text from ChatGPT.
Yes, I'm sure.
To get ahead of that. I have a question for both of you. Quick yes or no. Would you guys switch to Bing for your searching if it also gave you ChatGPT output when you searched, or no?
I'll try it.
Yeah,
I'll try it.
Accustomed to in general, so I'm not really sure if I'll make the switch.
Yeah,
that's fair. I for one believe it's still when you're looking for information, it's still a search problem rather than a ChatGPT applicable problem, right? Sometimes I just want to find the source also is important, right? So anyways, those random thoughts on the matter. Right. So anyways, back to the questions that I would now like to ask. What is the most interesting or most standout competition you guys have ever competed in? And I'll kick it off to Mikel first.
Oh, interesting question. It was probably the first competition where I did really well in, which was called Avito duplicate ads detection. And I think this is a really interesting competition. Basically, Avito is this Russian website that's kind of like eBay. Basically, people post listings for products, and they had this problem where people were posting like many listings for the same thing to try and get more views and to try and sell the product faster. So the competition was basically they gave you a bunch of these adverts on the website, and then you had to detect whether they were like for the same product. And it was really interesting just because of the sheer number of different signals that you could incorporate. It's not like, oh, here's an image, here's 2 images of an object, and let's train a neural net and tune the learning rate sort of thing. But you had like the title and the description and tags and the time it was posted, and then images and location and all of these things. And it's like, okay, you can't pipe these in. Well, now you sort of can, but back then you couldn't pipe it all into a language model and fine tune it, right? You had to extract features. So it's like, okay, what's the distance? And we created all sorts of features like looking at, okay, does the person posted, do they use capital letters when they're writing and stuff like this? And it was really fun to basically be coming up with these ideas manually. This feature engineering, which I think is like a really good skill that Kaggle has taught me, which is basically, okay, you look at a problem and you can sort of decide what useful inputs can I provide to this problem. So this was this competition. I was the first person to make use of the images, and I just did some very simple, like, comparing whether they were identical almost. And I shot up to the top of the leaderboard. I was super happy at the time. I mean, this was like my spot in the limelight. And so I messaged the person in second and third place, and I was like, hey, do you want to team up? And we went on to come second in that competition. the first place, we were first up until about 10 minutes before the end of the competition, and then it turned out that the team like in 7th were made up of grandmasters. They'd been hiding their real solution the whole time, and they just leapt up at the last second and took our win. But I just have fond memories of that whole competition. But I think that like really shows what makes Kaggle so much fun. It's basically turning this boring thing into a sport, or like, really like real-time competition. And so that's what really got me hooked a few years ago, and kept me going.
For me, I participated in this competition called Shopee Price Match Guarantee. So this was about 2 years ago, I guess. And we had to map similar images of products as well as take into consideration the product description and ensure that two particular products are the same or not. Because there were several, like one of them probably would be like a higher price product with the same image having a lower price product. And that's what we see on several websites when we go shopping. So this was something that really appealed to me because I was like, okay, this is something I experience in daily life. So I really enjoyed that. And we did a bunch of stuff for that. I think we plugged in NFNets and BERT and to create our final solution. But the part I enjoyed the most was thinking about how we could create more data than we already have. So this is something that I really enjoyed working with my team on. It's like a great learning process.
That's amazing. Yeah. Hearing like perspectives from you, Ruchi, about like your process, and then Mikel about the Kaggle, where the real team like they hid their real solution until the very end. Makes me wonder, like just in terms of like like Kaggle competitions and like stuff like that. Like I know that I'm super intimidated to like try Kaggle competition, and I think a lot of people are also in the same boat. Hearing your anecdotes makes it sound not as intimidating. Do you guys want to share, like just like walk us through like a competition from like getting started to choosing a model to perform like well enough to win? Like just like how you guys would approach it and like like what you guys do. I'll pass it to Ruchi first, and then Mikel.
So I usually spend a lot of time in understanding the problem statement because generally it's of a very different domain than what we usually work with. So I spend a lot of time in understanding a particular problem, and then I delve into understanding the data and spending time doing some exploratory data analysis. And then I just try to create like a rough baseline that will just engineering the like a solution that's just very makeshift. And after that, like I try to improvise on that, and like making like a cross validation strategy that's ensuring things are in place. And I delve into research papers and I come back because usually we have like a 2-month period during which a competition's there around. And oh yeah, another tip, keep an eye on the discussion forums because something or the other keeps popping up and you don't want to miss out on that. So
Yeah, I think I largely agree. Actually, I hear this thing about, oh, I'm intimidated to try. I hear that a lot, and actually, I was going to pick you up on it because you mentioned it at the beginning. But what I always tell people is like, there's no downside, right? You don't have to like perform well. I will always, so a lot of the time my general strategy is actually when I see a competition, like basically the first thing I do is just like download the data and then start make a super dumb rough baseline and try and get like the really low hanging fruit. So it might even be just working out what the average rate is in the data set and just submitting that for all the rows and stuff like that. And I think I sort of got a reputation for some time of basically publishing these like beat the benchmark scripts, whereas the idea is just like it might be like 5 lines, and then like I go immediately to the top of the leaderboard like a few hours after the competition starts, and so I had this sort of reputation for like being at the top for like the first couple of days of every competition. Maintaining it is a lot harder. But my strategy is basically like I make something very, very simple to try and get myself on the leaderboard. I just find it a very efficient way to like learn about the problem, and then I like iterate on that very, very quickly, and then maybe after a day or two, I run out of like really obvious stuff to do on my really, really hacky script. So then that's when I take a step back, and then I like, okay, read in more detail, and I'll probably end up rewriting it. But a lot of the time, I just won't get past that stage. So if you look at my Kaggle profile, there's loads and loads of competitions where I'm at the bottom of the leaderboard, and that's fine. You don't, with Kaggle points, you always get your rank always goes up when a competition ends and you're in it. You don't lose points for being at the bottom of the leaderboard. And actually, even there was one competition where validation is really important. You want local validation, and you probably want to trust it more than the leaderboard score. I only say that because you'll end up following the leaderboard score anyway because it's more exciting. But there was one competition where there's always a private and a public test set, and the people were asking about it was this fisheries monitoring competition. I won't go into too much detail about what it was, but there was this public and private test set, and people were asking. There was like cameras on boats, and you were doing data analysis. And people were always asking, "Is like, are these the same? Is the private test set? Is it like the same boats or like different boats or whatever?" And they didn't answer. They refused to answer, and I was like, "It sounds like it is." So I ended up just submitting this baseline, submitting the same thing for everything, and I think I ended up in like the top 10% of teams with this because everyone had overfit to this thing. So you never know. One of my best competitions is where I submitted a 3-line solution. So it doesn't hurt to try, I think is the moral of the story. And you can always submit to old competitions. What Anthony said earlier about the competitions now are harder and they take more compute, and they're mostly just mostly is an unfair term. A lot of them are just vision problems, which I think is less interesting. But yeah, there's like practice competitions. You can always submit to past competitions. So I would just recommend doing it. Grab other people's code and just shamelessly rerun it, and then try making modifications to it. That's how I got started.
Well, that is really helpful. Thank you both so much for the advice and the tips. I think that definitely motivated me to, like just get started like somewhere and then work my way up from there. So I will, definitely like that's going to be my goal for maybe like next week. I want to do like participate in something and then like, work my way up because it seems very frightening, but I think like with your advice and like stuff, I think it's less frightening now. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I know when Mikel was talking, he said something about his profile. So I actually did check out your profile. Like I've checked it out in the past before. Like I came across it. I checked it out today. I just saw that your bio is decision tree hugger, and I thought that was so funny. That's a really nice bio.
I think I set that like 6 years ago, and I just haven't changed it.
No, that's really funny.
I've got a minor follow-up. So you say that you said that it's not very interesting when a lot of the challenges are vision problems. Do you mean like in a Kaggle context or just in general? Because I noticed that like almost all of your research is in vision. So do you not find vision interesting then?
Okay, that's a very, very good follow-up. A very interesting point. So I think what I'm less good at, and perhaps that's why I find it less fun, is for example, like image classification or problems where you can't really break it down and come up with a like custom solution, where it's basically you a lot of the time it's taking off the shelf models and then training them exactly the right way and then assembling them exactly the right way. But for example, with a lot of my research, what you'll find is that these are problems where you can't just get a neural network to output it. So often there'll be like a bunch of rules or tree models that are transforming the output of a neural network and stuff like that, which I think is what I really like working on. So I like building more complex algorithms, not by hand, but putting these building blocks together, more than trying to train neural nets, because I think I'm cursed or something, and mine always perform worse than everyone else's.
It's your hyperparameters must be worse. You got to start copying everyone else's.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's actually the perfect direction to go, because the next question is about academia versus industry. Both of you are highly experienced in Kaggle and but in academic settings, but you've also worked in companies, and we'd like to hear about your experiences in academia versus industry in the context of data science, and which you find perhaps more fulfilling. So I'll pass that on to Mikel first.
So I'm unsure which one I like more. I don't know what I'm going to end up doing long term. I think there's a lot of pros and cons for both. In industry, you get to build more, I want to say, real systems, right? And if you're interested in the deployment side and all of these things, which I am, then that's sort of more down the industry track. And I would say Kaggle is more like industry, because you're trying to come up with real solutions to real problems. I say in quotes. From the academia side, I guess you're writing papers, you're trying to come up with new ideas, almost for the sake of new ideas, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because right, as an academic, that's your job to come up with new research. Perhaps you're trying to solve a specific problem, but you're not gonna be able to write a paper because you figured out how to train these models, these exact hyperparameters for this problem, or like set up server failovers or stuff like that. So I think it just depends on if people are wondering. First of all, I would say it's completely reasonable, because I'm unsure myself what I prefer. But it mainly depends on whether you prefer the idea of building systems and getting hands dirty, or whether you prefer the idea of coming up with new theories or writing papers and sort of coming up with new ideas rather than applying existing ones in the most effective way possible. But it's just, I think it's very much a personal preference, probably.
I think I've enjoyed working in the industry more when it comes to data science, because I like to talk about what I'm working on and explaining those things to people. So it's not just working on the problem. When you're a data scientist in the industry, you actually need to talk to a bunch of departments and talk to them about the feasibility and the extent of the problem that you're working on. So that's one thing that I would say is different between academia and the industry. And the second thing is we don't stress as much on the deployment half of it when we are in academia, but then those are things we really need to worry about if we are deploying something on a large scale in the industry. And we also need to take care about many other things, like the ethics side of things, because we want our product to be something that's very ethical in nature, something that's not producing bias, something that's fair to everyone. So there are a bunch of things like that.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, no, it's really nice to get like it's nice that like in academia, like a lot of times like the goal, I guess, like the goal is to like just get something out, but like the ethical side and stuff is like a really cool aspect that like most people don't really consider as much. It's nice to see that that is something that like you consider. Yeah, that's really cool. I recently took in like an ethics and CS course last term, and I was so intrigued by just like the whole concept of it because I've never done anything like it before. So I thought I just think it's really cool that yeah, you guys do take that into consideration. We do have a question from the audience. I think after we asked the previous question about like how to get started in Kaggle, someone asked how you guys would recommend someone get started just in a career of data, like just in the field of data, like where all like do they learn from and like what do they learn? And I'll just yeah, go to Ruchi first and then Mikel.
So I would recommend definitely picking something that's of interest to them. So if they're interested in computer vision, then maybe that's where they should start off. Many people even say, like, ask me whether they should start off with theory and then delve into projects. I'd say do both, or just like take a fast AIS course, and like that's something that's very hands-on. And I really enjoyed that. I discovered that later on in my data science journey, but if someone wants a starting point, then I'd recommend them to start from there. And then obviously like starting off Kaggle at the same time in parallel and seeing what things are like, and learning new things on the go.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm not a theory person. I'm definitely worse than my peers at maths and all of these things. I found that wasn't that necessary for like the practical Kaggle side, because what's important is getting an intuition about when different methods will work well and coming up with ideas. And for example, the in practice you don't really care about the properties of gradient descent or whatever, right? You have a box and you know what the input is and you know what the output looks like, and you understand how it works on that level. I think fast AI is really good. If you want to learn neural network stuff, if you want to learn the rest of it, or perhaps more on a basic level, you can go to kaggle.com/learn. And the people they've made actually some really good courses in the basics and actually approaching some competitions, I think, even. So I'd actually really recommend that. But yeah, it really just depends on what you feel like. There's no real right answer. It's like people, like I said, people like to learn the theory first, right? What I wouldn't do is get bogged down in that, because I've had lots of people contacting me and they say, oh, I want to learn data science, so I'm reading this book about probability and this one about calculus, and it's like, well, you can do that, but you'll end up doing that forever, right? You can just start if you like programming and so forth. You can start with that, and then you can learn the theory later, which is what I've done. And so I think you can sort of forge your own path. I think, especially in computer science, it's very, very unique, because you can do so much of it from your laptop. You don't need a lab, or you don't need you don't need to dig up an archaeological site or do any of these things that people in other majors might have to do. So just find some interesting project or whatever and just try to do it, and then even if you don't succeed, then you learn a lot.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Okay. So now that concludes our general questions, where we're asking both of you questions, and we're getting answers from both of you. And we're going to move on to specific questions for both of you. So I actually have a specific question for Ruchi from someone from the audience that messaged me personally. And they highlighted that you recently gave a talk at Oxford about synthetic data generation, and they wanted to hear more about that, and they wanted to hear more about that in general, and also how to do it well. They would like to know more about. So would you mind telling us a bit about that?
So I think that's a lot to summarize for right now, but just to go over briefly, I think synthetic data generation is something that most people are talking about in the industry right now, and it's something most people should learn and know how to do, because it's extremely important when it comes to um, ensuring that when we are exchanging data with parties we do not trust, and there's a trust factor there that we're not really sure about. So synthetic data or generation can be an option when it comes to sharing the properties of the data but not the real data itself. So it was more of a privacy centered talk that I had at Oxford, but and I gave a tutorial and stuff like that, and I delved into that. But yeah.
That's really interesting. I've never thought about it like that. So I did a side project where I was generating data to make new Titanics to simulate if there was new, because you know how Titanic data set is like the main one on Kaggle that
Yeah.
everything's about. I was like, let's make more Titanics and have more people die, because I thought that would be fun. Yeah, like I was just doing that for that, but you opened a whole new world of possibilities. That's a really interesting field, doing it for privacy reasons. So
Right.
thank you for that. Nesa, I suppose you have the next question.
Just to add to that quickly, if you're interested in ethics or privacy and these sorts of things, definitely do get into machine learning, because we need more people doing that, and we need more attention on this sort of thing.
No, definitely. I think like right now, I think a lot of people are not as informed about, I guess, like machine learning, like the benefits. I think people base it off of like movies and stuff where they see like, I don't know, like AI taking over the whole world. So I think that they think that is like the whole extent of like ML and like ethics really pertaining to ML. So I definitely think I totally agree. Like we need to, yeah, get more people into like AI ethics, ML ethics, like stuff like that, because I think everyone is like very like misinformed right now. Yeah, especially like ChatGPT and stuff. Like people just, I guess, have not like really a good idea of um like the full, I guess, like yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so I think that's really cool that yeah, you guys are like mentioning like the AI and like data privacy stuff. My next question is actually for Mikel. I know earlier he talked about doing like CV Kaggle competitions, and I know that you both shared like really good tips and advice for getting started with Kaggle. So just wondering, do you have any advice specifically for like computer vision Kaggles, and like what do you find like I guess most interesting about them? Like what do you find challenging? Like what do you like the most about them? Just like stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So I think we've moved past the sort of phase of classification competitions, like cat versus dog, hot dog versus not hot dog, that sort of thing. And there's a lot of different like multimodal like object segmentation and all these sorts of things. I have to say that I've sort of fallen behind on the state of the art, and there's sort of state of the art, and then there's like state of the Kaggle, because often the things that work in practice are the boring old tricks that actually often like aren't mentioned in papers at all. And so sort of my recommendation would very much be Fast AI, for example, as Ruchi said. Fast AI is basically a course for how to do computer vision competitions on Kaggle. I know that Jeremy Howard like did that a few years ago. And yeah, look at what other people are doing. There's lots of kernels, there's lots of code being shared, and I would basically start from that as a base, at least if your goal is to try and do well, because basically they'll have implemented all these little learning rate tunings and this and that and so on, and you'll learn very, very quickly what the current in fashion tricks are on the Kaggle side specifically. That's sort of my, at least, I have to do that whenever I come back to a computer vision competition. But yeah, also just think about things like the metric. Often like, for example, the output isn't, you can do some tweaking on it to try to like improve it versus the metric. So I think good example is often you have competitions which is like the metric is something called like MAP5, or similar, where it's you get scored on your top 5 predictions, but then in people's networks they say, okay, we'll submit any prediction with confidence over 10% or something like that. And it's like, well, you should just always submit 5, even if you know it's in the top 1, because you'll get a few more extra correct predictions. And so often I'll swoop in and I'll read a kernel and I'll see like, have they missed this? And they're like, yep, okay, cool. So I can just add that in and get an extra few percent. And I've got a starting point. So I think, yeah, there's all sorts of stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically it.
Thanks. Even though you said that you don't really like those competitions, you still gave a lot of really useful tips. So thank you. So my next question is a specific question for Ruchi. So you're the youngest triple grandmaster on Kaggle, as you mentioned earlier. What was your source of motivation and plan of action?
I didn't have a specific set of plan of action, but I started off with data sets, and then I saw that people really liked the work that I was sharing with them. And the data sets, the whole process of creating a data set was very interesting to me, like collecting data, ensuring it's in the right usable format, that's something that's of use to people. So I really started enjoying that. And every time there was a new trend in the industry, I was like, okay, maybe let's try to get this done. Like, let me try and see if I can get data in this particular format and of this particular topic, and I can share it with the community. So I started off with that. And then around that time, I think that was around the time I had just started learning data scraping. So it was pretty interesting to me at that time. And after that, I delved into like sharing notebooks and writing code about to explain the data that I have produced. Then I sort of went into competitions, and I like discussions is something I was doing on and off at the same time. So all these 3 tiers, like I had started contributing in a very parallel fashion. So and I just didn't want to stop, because these are all like-minded people like me, interested in data science. So I really like the environment on Kaggle. It's very positive, and people keep sharing stuff which is of use to people. So yeah, I guess that was my only source of motivation, and the reason I wanted to be consistent.
That's fair. That makes sense. Kaggle's a pretty great place. Everyone's like, yeah, I don't know if this is on purpose for maybe like Kaggle karma farming or something. But sometimes if I make the most innocuous comment, I'll get someone who's like very supportive of my comment, and it's like, are you just here for upvotes? I don't know. I'm still fairly new to the platform. I don't really know what's going on. But I can definitely say everyone's really nice. So that totally makes sense to me. And thank you for your detailed answer. Nesa?
Yes, I have a question for Mikel now. Also going back to something you said earlier with the team of where you were participating in the competition and you shot up to first place and they reached out to the second and third place people and you guys formed a team. That sounds like a really cool strategy, just to like form teams, because I don't really know that many people that are doing Kaggle competitions and I like never know how to form teams. Did you have like any other like tips or advice for like how to form teams? Because I think that is like also one of the things that like kind of holds me back.
Yeah. So I think it's okay not to know other people on Kaggle. So for example, when I was doing it, right, I was the only one that I knew doing it. So everyone that I ended up teaming with, I had basically never met before. And I've always had good experiences doing that. I think you can basically do that at any level. And I think they've recently added a feature where you can actually you can select yourself as looking for team, and people can see that on the leaderboard. And so generally, I would suggest just reaching out, after you've spent some time on the problem, and often it's basically you work on it separately, you work on it on your own until you've hit a brick wall and you don't not sure what to do next. And then you start reaching out to people generally around your rank on the leaderboard, and you can send them an email from Kaggle and just be like, hey, interested in teaming. The only important thing I would say is basically just to match expectations. So sometimes I've teamed with people and we're like, okay, we're in it to win it. I'm gonna be like every day working on this. And I've had times before where it's like, okay, I'm gonna team, but I'm really busy the next few weeks. So this one's just for fun, and let's just share ideas and so on. And I've had both of those work very, very well. And yeah, so I would just recommend, reach out to people and just have a chat over email, and then like I said, there's no real downside. The worst case is that even if you have a falling out, I mean, you can just do a different competition. So I really think it's a great way to basically learn, especially if, for example, you've gone down different paths, which often happens. That's why people don't usually team at the beginning of competitions, right? They'll team later on, and then when you have very different solutions, you get that big boost from combining your solutions. And that's also why, so for competitions Grandmaster, you need to be you need a solo gold medal, and gold medals basically like top 10. And that is by far the hardest part of becoming a Grandmaster, harder than the 5 gold medals in general, just because when you got a team, when you got several brains working on something, you can come up with a lot more ideas than when you're just on your own. But yeah, I definitely recommend teaming.
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you. Those are really helpful tips. I did have a quick follow-up question about that. I know you said that like you like message people that are like similar to like your rank, and then you don't necessarily like start with people. You like meet people with like similar solutions, I guess, or like not similar solutions, but like close to like kind of where you are. Um, like just wondering out of curiosity, like do you like I know you said you don't go into a competition with a team, but have you ever went into a competition with a team? Like, do you have like I guess like dream team that you go in with?
I have actually. So I've done a couple competitions with people at the University of Surrey, which is like a research group that I've worked with, and actually from their perspective, they're like, okay, we're doing this competition, do you want to come and join? And I'm like, sure, okay. And we've done it together from the beginning. So that's true, I have done that. Yeah, I think that for the most part, people don't go into competitions doing that unless it's like people that you already know. So I sometimes see people like making forum posts like, oh, I want to start this competition. Does anyone want to team up? It's like, well, if people won't want to team up with you, if you haven't started working on the problem yet, I think it's best to spend a bit of time doing it, and then it's also just because you might not know if you're enjoying it. Like if you're not enjoying it, stop doing different competition. But if you've decided, okay, I want to learn more about this specific competition, then find a team, and think it'll probably work out well.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. No, that was really enlightening. Thank you. I will pass it off to Anthony now for the next.
So I'm actually going to kind of combine 2 questions that we had for you, because you had touched on it a little bit in your last answer about the data sets. So the first question that I have for you is, what's your process in collecting the data like? Because you've contributed a lot of data sets to Kaggle, as you mentioned. And then also, once you have the data set that you maybe made, or if you pick someone else's, how do you go about creating a notebook that's valuable to the community and that gathers attention and stuff?
So I generally, like in the initial few days that I was active and creating data sets, I was doing a lot of data scraping, like I mentioned, because that's something I had just learned and I wanted to apply that skill and get better and better. But I realized over time that it was also very important to take into consideration that not all websites allow that. So it's something you need to be very, very, very of. So then I eventually started like looking, that's when I delved into synthetic data generation and trying to understand what the data may be like, seeing if a particular source of data has like a set number of columns and what kind of features there are. And so the talk I delivered at Oxford recently, the data set I generated synthetically was using GANs, and I showed them how they could do that using tabular techniques for data generation. And that's one thing that I do. That's the second thing, and another would be I don't know, using like probably APIs, and that's like my third source when it comes to data set generation. And when it comes to making a notebook, I initially start off with dataset like explanation, like what have I really done to collect this data? What do these columns represent? And how they can be used to answer like questions that people may have. And then I delve into EDA and things like that. So that's like my entire process, I guess.
Thank you for the detailed info. Is that when you said the GANs, is that CT GAN? Is that what the one you were using? I believe
Yeah.
that's the. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, cool, got one right. I'll pass it on to Nesa for our final question, because we are running close to time here. So
Yep. I do have one last question. I noticed earlier that Mikel has actually published a paper on Japanese character recognition or classification, sorry. That is really cool stuff. I wanted to know what your thoughts are on like, I know earlier you guys both answered like your thoughts about like academia versus Kaggle, but what are your opinions on like a research paper specifically, like working on that versus like kind of doing something similar but with Kaggle?
Yeah. So I think I'm glad you asked, because it's giving me an opportunity to talk about this project, which I really, really like. But yeah, I think it's I'll explain a bit more about the sort of overall project. So the idea is basically about 100 years ago, in Japan, they completely changed their writing system. They used to be like a cursive writing system, and they've now gone to the characters that we all recognize. And this created a problem, because now almost no one in Japan can read anything written more than 100 years ago. And obviously there's quite a lot of books and such written that long ago. So there's basically in national libraries and so on, there's millions and millions of books that people can't really read. But it's the same language, it's just a different alphabet. So what we've been trying to do with some groups in Japan is to basically try and create ML solutions to read in basically these old handwritten texts and transcribe them into modern Japanese. And the eventual hope is to basically use this to convert many books and make them publicly available so that people can read. And so this has been a really cool project. I mean, just based on like stories I hear of people actually using it. So we ended up recently publishing an app, which I think has just hit like 100,000 downloads, which is ridiculous for something that I would consider so niche. But it's really cool to see so many people doing, like, using this. So basically, you just get to scan a page and it will transcribe it for you. I have a friend in Cambridge who's like studying pre-modern Japanese, and she says, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to be able to use it to cheat on my exam." I'm like, "Okay, well, not great, but you know, for me, I one of the reasons I like this project is like, great, you know, it's a lot of AI applications. They've sort of almost got dual use problems where they can be used for nefarious things. But for example, applications of AI for culture and gaining better understanding of history is sort of something that's quite easy to sort of sleep well about, right? If that makes sense. And so I really enjoyed this sort of project I've been doing for a while. And of course, one of the things that comes out of that is when we come up with new ideas, we can basically publish we've been writing and publishing papers basically as the project progresses. But that's been definitely one of the most rewarding things that I've been able to do with basically the skills that I've gotten from Kaggle to help with that.
Thank you. Wow, that is such a cool project, and like one of the more cool applications. Like you said, everyone's always talking about how bad the next AI thing is and stuff, and it's really nice to hear that there actually are good things that are happening. So we are at time, but if you guys have a couple minutes more, I would like to get in one last question to Ruchi, and then we wrap up. Is that all right with you guys? Okay. So my last question will be, what suggestions would you offer to undergrad students on creating a strong data science portfolio that would aid in their search for internships and jobs?
So for internships and jobs, if there's a specific company that they're looking at, then maybe looking at the areas of application of that particular company and then doing a project in that specific domain would be something that will definitely aid them. And like being thorough in the work that they're doing, because I've seen people have like a lot of projects on their resume, but then none of them are like, some of them will be intermediate, some will be basic, but like having one advanced project is something that will really help them out, because that shows that the person has like they are someone who is well read. They're someone who knows how to work in a setting that demands like a lot of time, energy, and patience. So, and also obviously subject matter. So these are things that I would definitely recommend.
I'm really glad you said that, because I just like 2 weeks ago hosted a workshop called Build Your Data Science Project. And that was like my main message from the first one was stop it with these half-arsed projects and do one that's really good and have a nice README and everything.
Exactly.
So I like that you highlighted that. That just drove my point home to anyone in the audience who maybe didn't get to go, or if they did, then they're hearing it again. So thank you for backing me up. So, Mikel, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? I noticed that you unmuted your mic, or are we?
No. I think it's very interesting about that stuff about like having advanced projects. I think there are a bunch of projects. It's like, for example, if you write on your CV, like, oh, I made a chatbot or something like that. If you just write that, I feel like lots of people have that on the CV. There are like lots and lots of projects like that. I mean, I'm not a recruiter, so I don't know. But I'm, if you can try and find something to stand out, whether that's like, even if it's solving something really dumb problem that's personal to you, if it's like unique on your CV and you hear it with some unique solution to it, I think that looks really good. But I think Ruchi knows way better than me about this anyway.
Yeah, I 100% agree about what both of you have said on the matter. So thank you for your inputs. And with that, I suppose we'll be wrapping up. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to come and talk with us. I'm not sure what time it is for Ruchi, but I know Mikel is at least at midnight. So I mean, it must be late for you too. Is that right?
No, I guess I'm on the same time zone as all of y'all.
Oh, okay, so it's not too bad. Well, thank you guys. No matter what time, we'd really appreciate the amount of time you guys have dedicated to us. So thank you, and yeah, that's it. I've got nothing else to say.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course,
Good luck to everyone watching.
Thank you both so much for joining us